And I'm really delighted also to introduce Nat Puffer, Managing Director of In-Q-Tel, who is, I can't think of a better person to kind of come and critique the NATO initiative, given that it was modeled on In-Q-Tel. And In-Q-Tel, in case anybody doesn't know, independent, not-for-profit organization, operates internationally and services a number of kind of military and defense clients with the latest technologies. Also, when I was doing my reading on this, I realized that it's modeled on Q Branch, originally, from, which is famous from the James Bond movies. So I think you guys could work on a little bit of a jazzier kind of recruitment drive, because it's kind of, you could use the sort of the James Bond imagery there and so on. But anyway, so given that, this is kind of modeled on a In-Q-Tel, which has kind of established this over a number of years, what are your kind of reactions? Do you think this will work? What kind of pitfalls should Phil be thinking about trying to avoid as this gets set up?
I appreciate that. Is this?
I think it should be on.
So first thing, before I answer, yes, we've spent about 20 years being quiet and not really looking for publicity, so maybe we do need to change things up a little bit. The other part of this is I really wouldn't want to take anything away from Phil and the team. They've done an amazing job. Rob before Phil and the work that was done there by NATO, it cannot be understated, the amount of effort, blood, sweat, and tears and listening that was really done. I really would carry that into an emphasis that, your question of, is there a critique, or the things I would advise them on? Would I say, you should have done this differently or this better or something like that, or here's the lessons we could give you? They've already done all that work. In bringing up the fund concept, they went out to market. There was a number of people in this room that were part of the conversation. They really and truly listened. There was a number of experts that we ran into that said very thoughtful things, and I really can't give enough credit to the team in the evolution of what we saw in eventually coming up with the LPA and eventually coming up with a split concept of Diana and the fund. It really captured a lot of the things that I think we were able to identify as lessons learned over 20 years in building out the model. It's great. I would also just offer that, speaking for myself, and I'm speaking as an individual, not for In-Q-Tel as the firm today, I feel that these are very complementary initiatives. If anything, In-Q-Tel really does skew towards intelligence, and if you didn't get it from the introduction, we're a strategic investor for intelligence and defense internationally. Having a partner in the universe that is skewing towards defense is a welcome opportunity. There's entities in the US that have gone and tackled this problem, and an international entity, I think, just adds to all of our common mission.
So how do you plan to do you plan to cooperate? Like, will there be things that you'll look at, maybe invest in jointly, or if it's not quite for you because it's not so much in the intelligence sphere, it comes more under a defense skewing dual use technology, then it goes over, that way?
Yeah, God, I hope so. It would be terrible if we kind of went through this journey together and then just parted ways and didn't talk to each other again. I think that would be exactly it. There's probably some common areas based on the technologies that we could be co-investors. I think there's going to be areas that we identify either together or one at a time that is better suited for the other person's fund.
Yeah. Now, I've got a couple of really basic questions about this. This one's with Phil, but why did it take NATO this long to get here? Because In-Q-Tel's been around since, the 90s, so we've had this...
99.
Yeah, so it seems a little late in the game. What was that? Why?
I guess when you're trying to get 30 allies to agree on something, it might be a little bit slower on the uptake sometimes. And I should also say, I am speaking on my own behalf here. Whatever I say doesn't necessarily reflect the views of NATO, particularly in these crazy times. But nonetheless, I think after In-Q-Tel was founded, there were a number of venture capital firms in the United States in the national security space that failed quite miserably. NASA tried to launch a fund, it didn't go well. The Army really didn't go well, and folks in the Pentagon are still concerned about that. And so I think the risk appetite was just not there for an extended period of time. And it's only been really in the last 4 or 5 years, I think we've had a tremendous venture capital landscape that's been expanding. And so ultimately, those elements, plus the fact that in London in 2019, allied foreign ministers really embrace the fact, and heads of state embrace the fact that we have some serious catch-up to do. It's been more recently that we've seen the strategic competition in this space. We saw some of the data points earlier. You saw what happened in 2018 in China, for example. I think some of that was also a wake-up call.
Yeah, okay. And then the other question is kind of for you, Nat, again, very basic question, but is 1 billion enough? Because it sounds like a big number, but it's over 15 years. I mean, how much money do you think really should be spent on this to make a difference?
It's a fantastic question. For those of you that know our model, we're generally putting in very small checks. We have a bunch of theory and rationale that goes into the small checks. We don't lead rounds. We're not trying to push around markets. And I think the lesson in our discovery from that is a little bit of money put against deep technology and good companies judiciously can have a really outsized effect and impact on the types of things we're trying to do and the initiatives we're going after. So it isn't so much about the total amount. I think the amount is going to attract some really top talent for them. But I think it's really about how you apply it and being mindful over both the fiduciary responsibility, but also about the long-term impact you can have.
Okay. And I guess, key to making that money go further is that co-investment piece. I mean, how does co-investment work with you guys? You managed to get a lot of, the top tier sort of VCs, CVCs, all co-investing?
Yeah, I think it comes down to reputation. And In-Q-Tel over a period of time built up a reputation for doing very deep diligence, for really understanding and taking the time to think deeply about the technology and the companies that we were investing in. That created a very cooperative effect with the syndicates that we were investing in on Sandhill Road, where they would come with the checks, they would come with the VC knowledge, and we would come with both access to an exquisite set of customers, but also deep knowledge about the technologies and the interaction of those technologies. Over a period of time, we kind of grew together, and that really has allowed us to be cooperative in all of those cases.
How long did it take to kind of really win that reputation? I mean, this seems like a long game.
I mean, for us, I think that it took a while. It probably took the better part of a decade to really build that out with various different models and different ways of approaching the industry. We had the benefit of having some very good people early on who had vision, insight, reputation, network, and all of that was critical. But as you mentioned, the model has been somewhat proven out. So I think it is going to be better, and it won't take that long for people to really build out a good reputation.
Okay, so this is good news. You don't quite have to go for a decade. But it does sound to me like you have to do a really good job on those first couple of deals that you do to kind of prove that you're a worthy partner. I wonder, Phil, if you can talk a little bit about, again, so in this audience, you're hoping that, some of these people will either A, work for you, so if you're unhappy with your job, like see Phil because he's recruiting, but also, the co-investment. But there is a lot of VCs are definitely allergic to the idea of investing in defense-related stuff, and I don't know what the appetite is amongst, CVCs for that. Corporates can also be sensitive. So again, how are you what's your kind of pitch to allay those concerns that may be there?
Sure. So I think the first thing is this fund is not based on traditional defense technologies. We're not looking for new planes, tanks, so on and so forth. We're looking to solve challenges that are existential kind of across society. And the types of technologies that we're interested in should be broadly applicable. It's kind of the reverse of what happened in the 1980s with dual-use technologies, where it's defense-focused that also has a civilian application like GPS. We'd like to invert that relationship. And so I think we're chasing after the same types of technologies. I think the second is what we're currently seeing with the landscape here in Europe with the Russia crisis, is there's a change and about-face about how we view defense and defense spending. We are going through an absolutely significant, not seen before since World War II, level conflict on Europe's doorstep. And so with that, I think there's a recognition that there's more work that needs to be done. And I think in this particular space, there's so much synergy to be built. And ultimately, it comes down to the commercial operations of this fund. Who are the people that we get to run this? Are they well respected in the industry? Are they the type of people that you like to work with and like to do deals with? And does this fund have the mandate and the model to be a reliable, trustworthy partner? The good news is this is a public-private partnership. It's going to be around for a long time. This won't be politicizable in the sense of, allies can't choose to 3 years into the road say, all right, we're going to shut down the fund. That's very difficult for them to do, just like it would be a regular private, non-corporate venture capital fund.
Yeah. So we've only got a couple more minutes, but it's always fun to ask the "what are you looking at" question. So I'd love to hear from both of you. I mean, you've mentioned things, Bill, like quantum and human enhancement and so on. But maybe to you and then to Nat, like what's kind of the most exciting thing that's coming across your portfolios at the moment? Well, you don't have a portfolio per se, but in terms of what's top of your mind. And
I think for folks who've spoken with me already over the last couple of days, I'm really interested in NATO's Climate Action Pledge and the fact that we are striving to be the leading international organization for climate security challenges. And what that means is kind of interesting in the sense that you look that so much of our technology is supposed to be long-term. You look at our fighter planes, you look at our tanks and our trucks. They're supposed to be around for decades, but they run off of fossil fuels. They're not necessarily efficient. Emissions are, as I mentioned before, they're a significant threat. I'm really interested in technology that can help bridge the gap, especially on that environmental climate-related spectrum. So for me, things like energy, advanced materials, novel manufacturing, I'm really interested to see what's going on in that space to help address some of these issues.
Okay, and Nat, what about you?
So I think for us, it is the intersection of these really critical, deep technologies and how they start interacting with one another that becomes really interesting. So laboratory automation with synthetic biology becomes interesting. Artificial intelligence and machine learning stacked on top of that becomes very interesting. Even when we talk about climate action and carbon sequestration and all of those things, kind of thinking about how that comes into potentially efficient markets and decentralized finance, and what does that look like when you can take a carbon credit and actually transport that around the world and use that as a derivative capability to kind of offset for good other parts of your business or your ecosystem. So all of these technologies are super interesting, but what the seams as they start to come together are the things that we really look out for and I'm really interested in.
Okay, well, we have to finish here because now it's going to be time for the famous unpanels, which we definitely want to leave enough time for. But thank you so much. I mean, it's fascinating. It sounds like there's going to be so much to look forward to in terms of announcements and seeing who's going to be leading the fund and, the first few investments and so on are going to tell us so much about the direction. So hopefully you can come back and tell us about that another time. And Nat, thanks for the insights, and we'll also look at kind of what In-Q-Tel does next. And definitely play up that James Bond angle, because I think it's a good one.
Thanks, Maija. Cheers.